The notification arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as Jack Miller was finishing his coffee in his cramped apartment on Earth. The message bore the official seal of the Lunar Property Commission, something he had only seen in documentaries about. The early moon settlements. His great-uncle Robert, whom he had met only twice in his entire life, had passed away 3 weeks ago. The old man had been one of the original moon pioneers, those brave souls who ventured out when lunar living was still experimental and dangerous. According to the legal documents attached to the message, Robert had left him something unusual and abandoned mining outpost on the far side of the moon. Jack stared at the holographic deed floating above his kitchen table. Station Echo 7 established. In 2087, abandoned in 2119, the place had been sitting empty for over 30 years. Most people would have seen it as worthless, a rusted collection of old nodules, not worth the fuel to visit. But Jack, unemployed for 6 months after the factory closed, saw it differently. This was an opportunity, maybe his only one. The shuttle ride to the moon took 18 hours. Jack spent most of it reading through the station's original blueprints and operational records. Echo 7 had been a Helion-3 mining operation, one of hundreds that dotted the lunar surface during the Great Energy Rush. When fusion reactors on Earth became more efficient and required less fuel, many of these stations were simply abandoned. The cost of dismantling them exceeded their scrap value. The pilot, an older woman named Captain Brooks, glanced back at him as they approached the coordinates. "You sure about this, kid? That sector hasn't seen visitors in decades. No emergency services out there if something goes wrong." Jack nodded, though his stomach churned with nervous energy. "I'm sure." "How bad could it be?" Captain Brooks laughed, but there was no humor in it. Famous last words. The outpost appeared on the horizon like a metal tumor on the gray lunar surface. 3 connected domes, their surfaces pitted by decades of micrometeorite impacts, surrounded by the skeletal remains of mining equipment. The landing pad was cracked but serviceable. As the shuttle touched down, Jack felt the vibration through his suit, his first real contact with his inheritance. "I'll wait 2 hours," Captain Brooks said through the comms. "If you're not back by then, I'm leaving. No offense, but I'm not spending the night in this graveyard." Jack understood. He grabbed his equipment bag and cycled through the airlock. The lunar dust, undisturbed for decades, puffed up around his boots with each step. The main entrance to Echo 7 stood before him, its heavy door sealed but not locked. Uncle Robert had maintained the basic systems remotely, just enough to keep the place from complete deterioration. The door opened with a groan that he felt rather than heard in the vacuum. Inside, emergency lights flickered to life, casting long shadows down the empty corridor. The air recyclers started with a wheeze, filling the space with stale but breathable atmosphere. Jack removed his helmet once the readings showed green. The smell hit him immediately, not decay, but something else. Ozone and metal, with an undertone of something sweet he couldn't identify. He moved through the facility methodically, checking each room. The living quarters were sparse, but intact. The mining control room still had its banks of monitors, dark and silent. The storage areas were mostly empty, save for some basic supplies and equipment. It was in the station commander's office that Jack found the first sign that Echo 7 was more than it appeared. Behind the desk, a panel in the wall was slightly ajar. Inside was a data storage unit, military grade, and definitely not standard mining equipment. Jack plugged in his portable reader and waited as the files decoded. The first line made. His blood run cold. Classification level, ultra black. Project designation, first contact protocol. His uncle hadn't just left him a mining station. He had left him humanity's biggest secret. Jack's hands trembled as he scrolled through the classified files. The records dated back to 2115, 4 years before Echo 7 was officially abandoned. According to the documents, the mining operation had been a cover story from the beginning. The real purpose of the station was something far more extraordinary. The reports were written in dry, military language, but the content was anything but mundane. During a routine deep core drilling operation, the miners had discovered something buried in the lunar rock, something that shouldn't exist. A chamber, carved with mathematical precision, containing artifacts that were clearly not human in origin. Jack found the video logs and pressed play. His uncle Robert appeared on the screen, younger but still recognizable, standing next to a tall man in a military uniform. They were in what looked like a natural cave, but the walls were too smooth, too perfect. Day 12 of the excavation, Robert's voice echoed through the empty office. We've confirmed that the chamber is approximately 12,000 years old, based on the lunar dust accumulation in the entry shaft. Whatever built this was here long before human civilization even existed. A camera panned to show a series of metallic panels embedded in the cave wall. Strange symbols covered their surfaces, but there was something oddly familiar about their arrangement. They followed patterns, mathematical sequences that seemed almost comprehensible. The next file was a report from a Maya xenolinguist brought in secretly from Earth. Dr. Alan Price had spent 6 months at Echo 7 working to decode the symbols. His breakthrough came when he realized the aliens, whoever they were, had anticipated this moment. The symbols weren't just writing. They were a teaching tool, starting with basic mathematical concepts and building to more complex ideas. Jack checked his watch. He had been reading for an hour. Captain Brooks would be leaving soon, but he couldn't stop now. He quickly copied all the files to his personal storage device and moved deeper into the station. Following a hand-drawn map from the files, he found the concealed entrance to the lower levels. The real Echo 7 was hidden beneath the mining station, a vast complex carved into the lunar rock. Emergency lights activated as he descended, revealing corridors that mixed human construction with something far older. The main chamber took his breath away. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were covered with the same alien symbols from the video. But in the center of the room sat something that made everything else pale in comparison. A sphere of impossible geometry, roughly 3 meters in diameter, floating a few inches above a raised platform dot. According to the files, they called it the Archive. For 4 years, the secret team at Echo 7 had studied it, learning its language, understanding its purpose. It was a message, a test, and a gift all rolled into one. The beings who created it, the records called them the predecessors, had left. These archives throughout the galaxy for younger species to find. But why had everything been abandoned? Why had his uncle kept this secret for 30 years? Jack found the answer in the final set of logs. The military had wanted to weaponize the technology found in the archive. They had started bringing in weapons researchers, talking about strategic advantages and national security. Robert and the original science team had protested, arguing that the predecessor's gift was meant for all humanity, not just one nation or military force. The conflict had escalated until one night. Robert and 3 others had activated a protocol. They had discovered in the archive itself a lockdown sequence that would seal the technology until someone with the right intentions came along. The military couldn't break the seal without destroying everything inside. Frustrated and faced with budget cuts, they had classified the entire project and abandoned the site. Robert had spent the rest of his life waiting, searching for the right person to inherit this responsibility. In his final message, recorded just weeks before his death, he explained why he had chosen Jack. "You were always different," the old man's image said, his voice weak but determined. "Even as a child, you asked the right questions. You saw patterns others missed. You cared more about understanding than controlling. The archive will test you, Jack. It will judge if humanity is ready for what comes next. I believe you're the key to passing that test. The sphere pulsed with a soft blue light, as if responding to Jack's presence. He approached slowly, his heart pounding. As his hand touched the surface, symbols flowed across his vision, and suddenly he understood. The real adventure was just beginning. Asterisk. The moment Jack's hand made contact with the archive, the world changed. Information flooded his mind, not painful, but overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose. Images, concepts, and memories that weren't his own cascaded through his consciousness. He saw glimpses of the predecessors, tall, ethereal beings with bodies that seemed to shift between solid and light. He saw their great cities among the stars, their ships that moved through space by folding reality itself. But more importantly, he understood their purpose. The predecessors had achieved something remarkable. They had transcended physical existence, moving to a higher dimension of reality. Before they left, they had scattered these archives throughout the galaxy, each one a test and a teacher for younger species. The knowledge contained within could elevate humanity to the stars, but only if they proved worthy. The test had 3 parts: understanding, cooperation, and sacrifice. Each species that found an archive had to demonstrate all 3 qualities, not through words, but through actions. Many had failed. The archive showed him brief flashes of other worlds, other species that had let greed or fear guide them. They had been deemed unready, and the archives had sealed themselves permanently. When the connection broke, Jack stumbled backward, gasping. His watch showed that only 5 minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. Captain Brooks' voice crackled through his communicator. "Jack, you there? Time's up. I'm preparing for departure." "Wait," Jack responded quickly. "Captain, I need more time. I'll pay triple your rate." There was a pause. "Kid, what did you find down there?" Jack hesitated. The smart thing would be to lie, to keep the secret as his uncle had. But looking at the archive, he realized that was exactly the wrong approach. The test of cooperation meant he couldn't do this alone. "Captain Brooks, I need you to see something. It's going to change everything, but I can't explain it over comms. Will you come inside?" Another pause, longer this time. "You've got 10 minutes. To convince me, Miller." Jack met her at the airlock. Captain Brooks was in her 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too much. She followed him skeptically through the station, but when they reached the chamber with the archive, she stopped dead in her tracks. "Holy Mother of ... She whispered. Jack showed her the files, gave her the condensed version of what he had learned. To his surprise, she didn't run. Instead, she sat down heavily on a storage crate and laughed. "You know, I flew your uncle out here a dozen times over the years. Always wondered what he was really doing. Figured it was some government black project. But this..." She looked at the floating sphere with wonder. "This is bigger." "I need help," Jack admitted. "The archive wants us to prove we can work together, that humanity can unite for something greater than individual gain. But I don't even know where to start." Brooks stood up, her expression determined. "Well, first things first. We need supplies if we're going to stay here long term. And we need people we can trust. I know some folks, scientists, engineers, who've been pushed out of the corporate system for asking too many questions. They might be interested in a real discovery." Over the next 2 weeks, Brooks made supply runs while Jack studied the archive. Each interaction revealed more information, but also more challenges. The technology the predecessors offered wasn't just advanced, it required a fundamental shift in thinking. Their energy sources worked on principles that violated half of humanity's physics textbooks. Their medical knowledge could cure diseases, extend life, even enhance human consciousness. but it required abandoning the profit-driven healthcare system. The first recruit Brooks brought was Dr. Tom Wilson, a physicist, who had been blacklisted for refusing to weaponize his research. When he saw the archive, he actually cried. Next came Maria Santos, an engineer who had designed revolutionary recycling systems that corporations had buried because they were too efficient. Then David Kim, a young programmer who had been developing open-source AI before the tech giants, shut him down. Each person who joined them had to touch the archive, had to be tested. Not all passed. Some saw the knowledge and immediately thought of how to profit from it, how to control it. The archive rejected them, showing them polite but firm visions that they weren't ready. Those people left their memories of the specifics strangely fuzzy, remembering only that they had seen something important, but not what it was. By the end of the month, they had a team of 12. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. 3 months into the project, the team had transformed Echo 7 into a functioning research station. They had solved the power problem using blueprints from the archive, a fusion reactor that was impossibly efficient and produced no waste. The food shortage was handled by molecular assemblers that could convert raw elements into nutritious meals. It was like living in a science fiction dream, except it was real. But progress on the actual test was slow. The archive demanded proof of global cooperation, yet they were just 12 people on the moon. How could they possibly represent all of humanity? The answer came from an unexpected source. David had been analyzing the communication systems in the archive when he discovered something extraordinary. The predecessors had anticipated this problem. Hidden within the archive was a dormant network, connection points scattered across Earth and throughout the solar system. Other archives, waiting to be activated. There are 7 more, David reported to the group, his excitement barely contained. 1 in the Mariana Trench, 1 under the Antarctic ice, 1 on Mars, 1 in the asteroid belt, and 3 in locations the archive won't reveal yet. But here's the amazing part. They're all connected. If we can activate them simultaneously, it creates a planetary network. Jack studied the requirements. Each archive needed a team, people who had passed the individual test. But more importantly, the activation required something the predecessors called the choice, a moment when humanity collectively decided to step forward into a larger universe or remain isolated. They began broadcasting on quantum frequencies. The archive provided messages that could only be detected by those with the right equipment and knowledge. Slowly, responses came in. A research team in Japan had been studying unusual magnetic anomalies in the Mariana Trench. Scientists in Antarctica had discovered structures under the ice that didn't match any known geology. The Mars colony had found something in the Valles Marineris that they couldn't explain. The coordination was delicate. They couldn't use normal channels without alerting governments and corporations who would try to seize control. Instead, they built a network of trusted individuals, each one tested by their local archive, each one committed to the greater good. Maria made the breakthrough that changed everything. While studying the medical technology, she discovered that the predecessors had faced a similar challenge. Their solution was elegant. They had made their knowledge self-evident. Once enough people understood what was possible, the old systems would simply become obsolete. We don't need to fight the existing power structures, she explained. We just need to make them irrelevant. Look at this. She activated a hologram showing a medical device no bigger than a pen. This can cure cancer, all cancer. The plans are simple enough that anyone with a 3D printer can make one. What happens when we release this to the world? Tom nodded slowly. The pharmaceutical companies would try to stop it, but if the information spreads fast enough, exactly. And it's not just medicine. Free energy, unlimited food, faster than light communication once. People see what's possible. They won't accept the old limitations anymore. But Jack worried about the chaos such revelations might cause. The archive seemed to sense his concern, and in their next interaction, it showed him something new. The predecessors hadn't just left technology. They had left wisdom. Scattered throughout the archive were guides for transition, ways to transform society without destroying it. The plan took shape over the following weeks. They would release the information gradually, starting with solutions to immediate crises. Clean water technology for drought-stricken regions. Food production for areas facing famine. Medical treatments for pandemic diseases. Each release would be anonymous, open source, impossible to stop or control. But first, they needed to complete the test. The archive was clear until humanity proved it could work together. The most advanced technologies would remain locked. The weapons that could destroy planets, the tools that could reshape reality itself, these would only be released when humanity showed it was mature enough to handle them. Jack stood before the archive. The rest of the team gathered around him. In 6 hours, teams at all 7 other sites would attempt simultaneous activation. It was a risk. If they failed, if humanity proved unready, the archives would seal themselves forever. Whatever happens, Jack said to his team, we've already changed the world. We've proven that people from different nations, different backgrounds, can work together for something greater than themselves. Captain Brooks, who had become their unofficial supply chief and moral compass, smiled. Your uncle would be proud, kid. Win or lose, we've done something remarkable here. The countdown began. Around the world and across the solar system, 8 teams stood ready. The test of humanity was about to begin. Asterisk. The synchronized activation began at exactly 12 o'clock GMT. Jack felt the archive's energy surge through him as all 8 sites connected for the first time in 12,000 years. The sensation was shared by every team member at every location. A moment of perfect unity, seeing through dozens of eyes at once, feeling the heartbeat of humanity itself. But something was wrong. The connection flickered, destabilized. Through the link, Jack could feel the problem at the Antarctic site. Military forces had arrived. Governments had been monitoring their quantum communications after all. Soldiers were ordering the science team to step away from their archive. No, 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 David muttered, watching the readings fluctuate. If they break the connection now, we'll never get another chance. Through the neural link the archive provided, Jack could hear Dr. Lisa Park, the team leader in Antarctica, arguing with a general. You don't understand. This isn't about national security or territorial advantage. This is about the survival and evolution of our entire species. Step away from the device, Doctor, or we will use force. The general replied. Jack made a decision that surprised even him. He opened his mind fully to the archive, letting it broadcast his thoughts and memories to everyone connected, not just the teams, but to the soldiers, the generals, to anyone within range of the archive's influence. They saw through his eyes the truth of the predecessors, the civilizations that had failed because they couldn't overcome their divisions. They felt the weight of the knowledge being offered medical advances that could save millions, energy sources that could end scarcity, technologies that could carry humanity to the stars. But more than that, they felt the condition: work together, or receive nothing. This is bigger than nations, Jack broadcast through the link, bigger than corporations or military advantage. The predecessors are offering us a graduation ceremony for our species, but we have to choose it together. What happened next gave Jack hope for humanity. The soldiers in Antarctica lowered their weapons, not because they were ordered to, but because each one had felt the truth through the archive's connection. One by one, they placed their guns on the ice and joined the circle around the Antarctic archive. Similar scenes played out at other sites. In the Mariana Trench, naval forces that had surrounded the underwater research station instead began protecting it from corporate submarines seeking to claim the technology. On Mars, colonists who had been divided by Earth nationalism stood together. Hands joined around their archive. The connection stabilized and then strengthened. The archives began to sing. There was no other word for it. A harmony that resonated in the bones of everyone connected. Information flowed freely now, not just technical knowledge, but understanding. The artificial barriers between nations, races, and ideologies seemed suddenly absurd in the face of what they were being offered. Through the link, Jack heard voices from around the world. A child in Nigeria who had been dying of a curable disease suddenly understood how to heal herself. An engineer in India saw how to build machines that could reverse climate damage. A teacher in Brazil glimpsed educational methods that could unlock the full potential of human consciousness. But the final test remained. The archive presented them with a choice, projected simultaneously to every human on Earth through their devices, their dreams, their very thoughts. Accept the predecessor's gift and leave behind the old ways of competition and scarcity, or refuse and continue on the current path alone. The voting wasn't done through ballots or computers. It was a choice made in hearts and minds, measured by the archives through the collective consciousness of humanity. Jack could feel the tide turning, fear giving way to hope, suspicion replaced by curiosity, greed overwhelmed by the desire for something greater. The moment of decision came like a sunrise. Humanity chose to step forward. The archives released their full knowledge in that instant, not as a flood that would overwhelm, but as seeds that would grow. Each person received what they could understand and use, with the promise of more as they grew ready for it. Jack found himself back in the chamber Echo 7, the archive now glowing with a warm golden light. His team was laughing, crying, embracing each other. They had done it. Humanity had passed the test. Captain Brooks clapped him on the shoulder. Your uncle knew, didn't he? He knew it would take someone like you, someone who wouldn't try to control it, but would share it. Jack nodded, understanding finally why Robert had waited so long, why he had chosen his unremarkable great-nephew for this momentous task. It was precisely because Jack was ordinary, because he represented not the elite or the powerful, but everyday humanity with all its flaws and potential. The transformation wouldn't happen overnight. There would be resistance, setbacks, those who would try to maintain the old ways. But the seed was planted. Humanity had chosen to grow. As Jack looked at the archive, he saw a new message forming in symbols he now understood perfectly. Welcome to the galactic community. Your real journey begins now. Outside, the Earth hung in the black sky, looking the same as always. But Jack knew that everything had changed. Humanity had inherited not just an abandoned moon outpost, but a destiny among the stars. And they had proven themselves worthy of it. The hidden records had indeed changed everything. Asterisk.